Russell Raymond is an aristocrat from a fallen noble family who now spends his days as a mercenary. After losing both his family name and the last hope of restoring his family's former glory, he now wanders around taking mercenary jobs just to make ends meet. His latest job search has brought him back to the kingdom's capital city, known as Camelot. It's not called the capital for nothing. There stands the Magic Tower, home to the kingdom's most powerful guardians. At one point in his life, Russell also worked hard to enter the tower and prevent his family's downfall. You see, after his father's death in the war against the Empire, his family was forced to flee the castle. Russell had to enter the Magic Tower to reclaim his territory, and in the process, he was separated from his mother when he was very young. All the sacrifices he made were in vain, because he was expelled from the academy before even having the chance to apply to the Magic Tower. He received 3 failing grades, and according to the academy director, this was an unprecedented event in the entire history of the institution. Although he did well in theory, the problem was that he couldn't reach the second circle of magic. The reason he couldn't progress was a condition called mana constriction. Apparently, his mana was thin and weak, which meant that he could only absorb a limited amount of mana and also couldn't release any of it, which is the worst curse a mage can have. So Russell ended up living his life as a mercenary. Although all his mercenary field experience helped him reach the second circle, he was still considered a third-tier mage. The doors of the White Tower suddenly open, and the assistant announces that registration for today's temporary jobs has ended. So everyone who had been waiting outside at noon is upset to hear this, but since they have no other choice, they decide to leave. Meanwhile, our guy just stays there silently listening to what others are saying. One person mentions a rumor that the museum is looking for temporary mages, but another argues that they are only seeking first circle mages to perform menial tasks, so working there would only be a disgrace. But our guy doesn't see it that way, especially since he barely has any money left. Later, he arrives at the famous Museum Lou. Inside, he follows the museum owner who introduces the place to all the newly recruited workers, including him. The owner explains that many aristocrats will visit this week, so everything must be impeccable. He warns them to be careful when cleaning because if they cause any damage, they must be ready to face the consequences. As they walk down the hallway adorned with artifacts that could very well be fake, our guy suddenly sees a closed door that seems strangely familiar. The plaque on the door reveals that it is the Fantastic Species Room, and Russell feels a persistent strange sensation in his mind that he has seen this place before. At that very moment, his mother's ring begins to vibrate for some mysterious reason. He stares at the door for a while, and before he realizes it, his body starts acting on its own, opens the door, and enters. Once inside, the ring's vibration intensifies. Russell closes his eyes to listen to what his mother is trying to tell him. His mind travels to the past, to a time when he had visited this place with his mother. He remembers an unexplored part of the museum that he never had the chance to visit. After a moment of reflection, he walks toward that area. There he finds something extraordinary, the ancient heart of a dragon placed separately from all the other artifacts. The ring, on the other hand, begins to vibrate more intensely. Russell notices the connection between these two artifacts. The ring is shaped like a dragon's eye, and the object in front of him is an ancient dragon's heart. He quickly puts the ring on his finger, and the vibrations gradually cease. However, after a brief pause, the ring begins to crackle with a mysterious power, and a voice starts to resonate in his mind. The voice tells him that since the eye and the heart have met, another eye has opened, a gigantic dragon looming over Russell. In his mind, it reveals that he is destined to be the cornerstone of a new mythology. Because of this, Russell has been granted a new opportunity, this time for the good of mythology itself. As the voice fades away, he awakens his system, and everything around him distorts in an instant. He is sent back to the past. He can faintly hear his teacher shouting furiously at him, followed by the unmistakable sound of a book hitting him directly on the head. He startles and returns to reality as the teacher scolds him for falling asleep in class. Of course, Russell has no idea what is happening or why the teacher, Hubert, is suddenly harassing him. After all, according to what he remembers, Hubert had already passed away. He looks around curiously, observing the students to his left and right, and then down at himself. It doesn't take him long to realize that somehow he has been sent to the past. Meanwhile, Hubert expels him from class as punishment. Russell, for his part, still doesn't know what kind of magic could have caused his regression. Now that he thinks about it, he's sure it must be the work of that dragon that spoke to him. Then he notices that his ring has disappeared, which makes him wonder for a moment if his mother could be involved in all of this. At that very moment, the teacher leaves the classroom, Although our boy apologizes for his mistake, the teacher is not satisfied with it and invites him to his office for a one-on-one meeting. Although Russell is in trouble, he really enjoys the feeling but soon receives a hard blow to the back of the head. Of course, a classic group of bullies has come to bother our boy. One of them, a guy with blonde hair, decides to slap Russell as well, but his friend stops him because the teachers are watching. Russell recognizes the blonde guy as Frederick. Frederick then gives him a deadly look and orders him to follow them to the bathroom if he values his life. With that, they leave while Russell feels excited at last to be able to live this whole experience. Suddenly, his notification system tells him he must teach those bullies a hard lesson. In return, he will receive a magic stone. Russell is not sure what kind of illusion this is, but before he can find out, Frederick yells at him again, telling him to follow or try to run away anyway. They wouldn't care. Russell decides to teach them a lesson before doing anything else. After living so many years as a mercenary, empty threats and Frederick's death stares don't affect him in the slightest. Compared to this, these guys are like teddy bears you can hug anyway. Once in the bathroom, Frederick throws a taunt at Russell, but he responds with the same energy, calling him a stupid, useless. The trio is stunned to see that he exudes unshakable confidence. But they are not there to put up with nonsense. The most impetuous of them makes a fist to punch, but Russell dodges and delivers a devastating blow that knocks him unconscious. The second, seeing his friend fall, also charges at Russell, but he also receives such a strong blow that he is knocked out with a single hit. Still, this is not enough to scare Frederick. In fact, he becomes more arrogant. He throws his smoking pipe aside and prepares to fight. He throws a punch at Russell while mocking him, saying that since Russell can't use magic, he has learned some cheap martial arts. This, according to him, is what is expected from a fallen family. Frederick then puts 4 rings on his fingers, reminding Russell that, although magic is forbidden, small artifacts are allowed. With that, he lunges at Russell, but our boy simply grabs the fist coming toward him, twists the wrist, and watches Frederick's knees. The cold gaze of Russell yields from pain, shaking Frederick to his core, and he is furious that someone like Frederick dares to mention his last name. With a final blow, Russell takes care of that guy once he has finished teaching these thugs a lesson. Russell leaves the bathroom and sits on the floor leaning against the wall. Wondering if he went a bit too far at that moment, the system notification appears before him, and he receives the lowest grade magic stone as promised. As soon as the stone is in his hand, the system instructs him to consume it. Although Russell is not sure if he should really eat it, he believes this must be another chance mixed with the possibility of living again. He begins to chew the stone and realizes it has quite a pleasant taste. Suddenly, a red energy called mana starts to appear around his body. The energy soon envelops him and scares him. The screen notifies him that he has obtained the mana contained in the stone. He suddenly feels a sensation coming from his chest, and our boy remains scared. Suddenly he realizes what is happening and places his hands on his chest to stabilize himself. He realizes that the mana he consumed is flowing outward, so he calms down to let it do its work. The screen appears again and informs him that the mana in the circle is increasing. The mana is not only increasing, but the mana he received is being absorbed by the magic circle around his heart. He remains calm and is glad that it is finally stabilizing. Our boy suddenly smiles because it seems he has found a stroke of luck, since with this new method, he can finally overcome the narrowing of his mana that he always feared. He thinks about the fall of his family and then about his expulsion from the academy, as if those experiences were not bad enough. He had to live as a third-rate mercenary. Finally, it seems he can change the future he had foreseen. He walks down the hallway with a new joy, and it seems things look bright. Moments later, Russell knocks on Professor Hubert's door and is told to come in. He enters the room and the old man asks how he feels. Russell sits down, discouraged, and the professor calls his name in the way elders do. When you get into trouble, Professor Hubert tells him he is not the same as always. Listen, to help solve the problem, he suggests what the problem might be. He asks Russell if he is going through something difficult. The professor informs him he heard a rumor that his classmates are bullying him and wonders if that is the cause. Russell recalls his pleasant moments with Professor Hubert in his past life and remembers how he never gave up on him. He finally smiles when it is his turn to respond and remembers he always wanted to say this. So he informs the professor that there is no need to worry. The old man is surprised by his words, and Russell thanks him for asking. The professor coughs and states that it is his job as a teacher to take care of his students. He adds that, however, he will be punished for falling asleep in class today. The professor opens the book in front of him and tells him that the punishment will not be easy. He assigns him a task to write an analytical report about a part of his textbook, apparently. It is a section that even upper-year students have difficulty with. While he speaks, the screen appears again and announces to him that his new mission is to complete Professor Hubert's assignment. The system informs him that he can get additional rewards depending on the level of completion and the level of satisfaction of Professor Hubert. The reward is another lowest-grade magic stone, as well as something mysterious. Russell's eyes open wide when he realizes that even completing tasks are missions. The professor notices his eyes open wide, so he asks if the task is too difficult. Russell replies that he doesn't, so he thanks the professor. Later, Russell completes the task after a few hours. He thinks to himself that the task is not as difficult as it seemed. In his past life, he used to study the theoretical part of magic a lot because he was unable to use mana practically. But there is something else he must pay attention to in this new life. There is something as important as studying, and that is mana training. Russell remembers one of his jobs as a mercenary when he was fleeing from a monster. He explains that the mana vein is the path through which mana circulates. Mana is absorbed through breathing. Mana also circulates through the mana veins and is collected in the heart. In the memory, the monster approaches our hero. The monster strikes the ground with one of its large claws, and Russell quickly jumps out of the way while running. He turns around and notices that the monster is coming to attack him again. He explains that the reversal of mana flow outside the body is called magic. In the memory, he does some magic circles and casts fire from his hands. It is a large amount of fire, and the fire envelops the monster. The point is that the stronger your mana veins are, the more mana you can collect and the faster you can release it. After the fire dissipates, the monster is obviously unharmed. It seems he couldn't release fire strong enough to harm it. He realizes he is in trouble, so he tries to generate a shield to block the monster's next attack. Before he can complete the chant to cast the spell, he feels a sudden impact. The monster quickly hits him with its tail. The monster finally advances to finish him off. He remains on the rock, slightly unconscious. Suddenly he regains consciousness, but is quickly hit again by the monster, which throws him deeper into the hollow stone. He wonders if heaven sympathized with his unfortunate fate, or if it was just luck. The point is that the fall threw him into an underground site. When he gets up, he tries to find his way out inside this site. He finds two grimoires containing strange secrets. Our guy approaches the books and goes to pick them up. The first book is called Overban, and the other is called Wizard Body. Back in the present, Russell goes out jogging to continue his mana vein training. He explains that the book called Overban trains the physical body and expands the mana veins. The other book, Wizard Body, teaches exercises that help replace muscle tissue with part of the mana vein. In other words, the stronger your body gets, the firmer your mana becomes. Russell remembers that the change he experienced when doing this as an adult was not so great, but since he is now in his growth stages, there could be greater results. Our guy trains vigorously, determined to overcome the narrowing of his mana this time. Shortly after, the sun begins to set while he is still training. Our hero goes to rest near a tree and confesses that he can no longer continue. He pats himself on the back, thinking that so much training should be enough for his training regimen for one day. Suddenly the screen appears again and notifies him that the mission to practice the ancient skill called Overban requires him to run 5 kilometers, but he has only run 0.05 of the 5. The reward for running 5 kilometers is that the speed boost resulting from practicing the skill will increase. Russell sighs after reading the notification. To give him an incentive, the system notifies him that while practicing Overban, he can repeat this mission once a day. The system also adds that depending on how he improves, the required distance will increase each time. Finally, after reaching a certain level in Overban, the mission will no longer appear. Russell is alarmed and asks the system what the rush is, since the notification sounds like a threat. So he decides to train reasoning that he has barely gotten such an opportunity. He can't stay still and let it pass. Shortly after, our boy keeps going and runs 1.4 kilometers out of the 5. He continues and reaches 2.7 kilometers out of the 5 at this point. His legs start to tremble. He reaches the point where he has to take a break. Because he feels like his knee is broken, he checks the screen and notices he has covered 3.6 kilometers. So he consoles himself thinking he's almost done and decides to give one last push with all his remaining strength. Our boy runs like crazy to reach the goal. Already at night finally. He sees the notification that he has completed the mission and that there are rewards. Because of that, he throws himself to the ground and feels like he will die if he takes another step. The great achievement makes him smile, and he wonders how he's going to get back to the dorm. The next day, the following morning, Professor Hubert, he reviews Russell's report. and can't believe what he sees given its depth. He looks at Russell and asks if he is sure that he was the one who prepared the report. Our boy gives him a clever smile and affirms that he did it himself. The professor notices his confidence. Finally, Professor Hubert speaks and tells him he is very satisfied with his report. Suddenly the screen appears again and notifies him that he has completed the mission and will now receive a reward. His rewards are another lower-grade magic stone and an additional gem of the same size. He also receives a greater understanding of the art of summoning beasts. Due to this increase in understanding, he will receive a power boost, a decrease in mana consumption, and a reduction in spellcasting time. Russell realizes that the higher in his level of comprehension, the stronger he becomes. He quickly decides to take advantage of this. The professor praises his work and tells him he can leave now. Before leaving, Russell decides to ask the professor for a favor. Moments after Russell asks the favor, the professor asks why he would want to use the faculty library. The man mentions that the student library should have enough books to satisfy all his needs. Our boy informs the professor that he has already read all the books in the student library. This seems hard to believe, so the professor asks him if he really has read them all, to which Russell answers affirmatively. His teacher says it's surprising to hear that. However, he says that even if it's true, it's a completely different matter to allow him to use the faculty library. The professor tells him he will put him to the test to make sure he is qualified. For that, Russell lights up and agrees that it's totally understandable. Shortly after, several mission windows appear, all requesting that our boy complete each task the professor gave him to obtain the rewards. While running, he thinks about how many tasks the professor gave him and reasons that he is quite a demanding man. Considering that the better the theory is understood, the stronger the magic will be. Our boy decides it will be worth it, and he is determined to access advanced level knowledge in the faculty at all costs. Eventually, he considers that he will also get a magic stone for each mission, so it's like killing two birds with one stone. While enjoying his water drink, someone approaches him and calls him by his full name. It was Anton Frederick, who mentions that his friend had to suffer because of him. Russell responds sharply, asking what's wrong with that, and asks if Anton is here to take revenge. Anton laughs and says it makes no sense to come here to take revenge on him, and his friends laugh with him. He tells Russell to stop fooling himself, joking that no one would take revenge on a piece of trash like him. Anton tells him he would rather stomp on him than take revenge. Here the bully passes by him and intentionally bumps into him, reminding him that they will see each other in class. Russell remembers that they have class soon and wonders why Anton is so cocky about it. Suddenly he remembers that the class they have together is Practical Magic Combat Studies, where students are evaluated based on their training fights against each other. The bad thing about this is that in his fights against Anton in his past life, he was always humiliated in that class. He remembers how Anton always defeated him in fire, magic, and dominated him. He laughed and mocked him because he doesn't have good mana veins. Roussel. He can't believe he so foolishly forgot that they have to do those battles. Our boy decides that he has to start preparing quickly for it. Better late than never. Suddenly the screen notifies him that he has a new mission: to achieve the second circle by increasing the level of understanding of the attributes he currently possesses. That day, Roussel spends all his time doing each of the tasks the professor gave him, and works until night. The next morning, he carries a stack of papers to the professor's office to hand in the tasks. The system shows several notifications for each task, and tells him he has completed his mission and will now receive his reward that afternoon. Roussel returns to the dorm after a well-spent day and decides to check his rewards. He sees about 10 magical stones that the system gave him and wonders what to do with them. A growing uncertainty arises inside him as he picks them up, wondering if his body can handle several magical stones at once without causing adverse effects. Eventually, he seems to accept his fate and proceeds to take the stones. He tells himself he will have to trust the training he has gone through for so long. A few seconds later, our boy throws the 10 stones into his mouth and chews them for a brief moment. Nothing happens. Moments later, the mana from the stones is released, and his body suddenly looks wrapped by the mana. It becomes more pronounced, and the whole room is consumed by a bright light. Suddenly, he begins to feel his body burning. While absorbing the mana toward his heart, he quickly opens a path to his mana veins. Roussel begins to create a path to shape the flow of mana, continuing to direct the flow of mana to channel it toward his heart. It's clear he is suffering some pain, but he decides to endure it. He also begins to spin the mana to trace a new circle around his heart like the first one, to be able to achieve a second circle. If he doesn't do it correctly, his heart will not be able to achieve it. Our boy carefully draws the second circle, but hesitates before reaching the end, afraid he might make a mistake. He decides there is no turning back, so he decides to finish it. His veins begin to absorb the generated mana once he concentrates and completes the circle. Our boy refuses to give up no matter the consequences. There is no way he can achieve his dream of being a world-class mage without doing this, so he promises himself to achieve a second circle. Suddenly, a bright ray of light bursts through his window, and it seems to be exploding. Moments later, Roussel wakes up on the floor and realizes he succeeded. He realizes he has finally achieved the second circle at last. The mana flows into his body as he lies on the floor. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he has completed the mission and will now receive rewards. Apparently, his understanding of elemental attributes has greatly increased, so the power of each elemental magic has also increased considerably. The next morning, the professor reads all the reports Roussel handed him. He exclaims in amazement and confesses he can't believe he was able to complete all those tasks in such a short time. The professor tells him there is one last question before he can grant him access. It is a question that is more fundamental compared to the previous ones. The professor asks which of the structures is the most important among the 4 structures that make up magic. The question leaves Roussel silent. The professor Hubert notices his silence and begins to regret having asked a question he himself just solved. To avoid overwhelming him, the professor quickly stands up and proposes, "Ask a different question." Russell, who had remained silent the whole time, begins to answer the question anyway. The professor is surprised by Russell's confidence. Shocked that he has an answer, Professor Hubert stops talking and finally listens to him. Russell answers that the most important structure in magic is the mental image of the person performing the magic. The professor hesitates for a moment and considers the answer given. Finally, Professor Hubert asks him why he thinks that is so. Russell reflects deeply on the question before speaking. He says that magic is manifesting something in the real world using mana. The world categorizes this process into 4 different levels. The first level is known as assimilation, where the principles that guide natural phenomena are learned. The second step is to create a mental image, where you visualize what you have learned in your mind. The third step is called construction, where formulas are built to manifest the visual image. The last part is manifestation, where magic comes to exist in the real world. Through the formula, Russell adds that understanding construction and manifestation can be learned with enough effort and study. However, the mental image is not something that can be achieved by effort alone. Our guy extends his hands and generates a flame to explain his point. He explains that he can choose to imagine that this flame is an arrow and visualize it in his mind. If he does that, the flame will become the second magic circle. Fire arrow, true to his words, the flame in his hands transforms into the shape of an arrow. Then he says he can also choose to imagine something else. Apparently, the flame will follow his imagination and become something completely different. He says he does not have to set a limit on his mental visualization because by doing so, he could create something that does not exist in this world. The professor simply listens attentively and confirms everything he has said. Russell says that everything starts with understanding how the world ends and then twisting the rules of the world to achieve something beautiful. Russell extinguishes the flames and ends his explanation confidently. Professor Hubert, who has been listening the whole time, thinks about how remarkable Russell seems to have become. Finally, he speaks and says that he has been able to confirm what he was thinking. The professor smiles and tells him that the student library is a world too small for him. Suddenly, the system notifies our guy that he has completed the mission of gaining access to the first floor of the professor's library, and that he will receive 2 low-quality mana stones. Later that day, Russell enters the first floor of the professor's library. Only the first floor seems quite spacious, which intrigues him. This is very different from the student library. He quickly starts checking the books and finds some. He sits down and begins to read them to him. These books are more practical than those he normally has access to. Suddenly, a woman enters the library and watches Russell from behind. Finally exclaiming to get his attention, she tells him he is reading a rather interesting book. Russell is surprised to hear her voice and realizes he is not alone. He quickly puts down the book and turns around. Strangely, he sees no one, and it turns out the woman has disappeared. Somehow, in front of him, she points for him to look forward. She is dressed like a mage, and Russell recognizes her. The woman smiles at him, and he recognizes her as Dua Snow White, the master of the Flame Tower. He quickly greets her and introduces himself. Russell feels uncomfortable in her presence because she is in the realm of the 8th circle, something not many in the world have achieved. Despite being over 80 years old, uses an incredible amount of mana to maintain her youthful appearance. She is the master of the best-ranked magic tower of the Red Tower faction, called the Flame Tower. She pulls out a large pacifier from nowhere and quickly reassures him, saying he does not have to be nervous. Wondering how a student could have gained access to the library, the professor turns around and asks Roussel, informs him that Professor Hubert allowed him to use the library, Daria exclaims softly and asks if a man is serious, as Professor Hubert really allowed him to use the library. Our boy starts to smile, realizing that the professor can be a bit strict actually, she mentions, that it makes sense, and explains why she was learning something so interesting. When she entered, the woman scans him with her eyes and notices that he has an extremely pure mana and perceives that his mana distribution is also very stable. She looks at him again and murmurs that it's rare to find someone like him. Daria passes by him and tells him not to worry. To relieve his tension, she assures him that she is not there to scold him or get in his way. Roussel bows again and thanks her for her kind words. Suddenly, Daria strikes the ground, and a bright light comes from the spot she tells him to grow to reach his best potential. But when he looks again, she is no longer there. The only thing left of her is the bright light, and it seems she had teleported to another place. Roussel is stunned and simply looks at the place where she was standing. After finishing, the protagonist leaves the professor's library and closes the door, quietly still surprised by the encounter. While daydreaming, he hears a voice from behind asking him if he is the one standing by the door. Roussel turns around to look at the person speaking, and it turns out to be Anton and his gang. A friend of Anton wonders why Roussel is leaving the professor's library and asks him who he thinks he is. Anton comments that it seems Roussel must have done errands for some professor, but that doesn't change the fact that he won't amount to anything. The boys walk away laughing, and Anton tells Russell to keep trying his best as he walks away. He looks back and says it won't do him any good anyway. Shortly after, the students gather at the Academy Stadium for real situation magic classes. The first to be called goes down to the stadium field and has to choose another student to be his opponent. The teacher in charge usually chooses the weakest student. This is done so that the student can choose someone of their own level to compete with. Suddenly, all eyes turn to Russell, and it seems everyone expects him to be chosen. Russell mentions that he was always the first to be called in his past life. Some nearby boys jokingly murmur that Russell will be chosen again because he has a condition known as mana vein constriction. One of the students immediately starts begging Russell to choose him as his opponent when called. To be able to raise his grades this semester, another student tells Russell not to choose that fool, but to choose him instead. The teacher notices the commotion and asks all the students to be quiet, then proceeds to choose a student and starts calling the first name. Everyone starts whispering that it will be Russell, and some start laughing to everyone's surprise. The name called is Anton Frederick, which leaves the students surprised. Anton walks proudly to the teacher, thanks him for calling him, but the teacher tells him that it's nothing compared to the favors he receives. From the Merchant Association, Frederick Roussel is alarmed and thinks to himself that he expected this to happen. Anton walks to the center of the field and stops to choose. One of the students looks directly at Russell and tells him to go down to the stadium. Meanwhile, Professor Hubert receives an unexpected visit from his teacher and tells him it would have been nice if he had warned him before arriving. It turns out to be none other than Daria Snow White. She sits down and says it's okay. He replies that it's no big deal for a teacher to visit her student. Remembering the student he met in the library, the teacher asks him he gave a pass to the professor's library to a boy named Russell. Hubert quickly confirms that he did, and asks worriedly if the boy made any mistakes. Daria informs him that no, but that it had been a long time since she had seen something so strange and valuable. Hubert agrees with her, and says that the narrowing of the Kelsa/and mana veins of Russell is an uncommon disease. Even on this continent, the teacher tells him he is a fool, because he didn't talk about it at all. His words surprise Hubert, who quickly looks up to find out why she said that. She informs him that Russell has managed to overcome his own problem, and Professor Hubert asks what she means by that. She doesn't speak for a while, and continues drinking her tea. When she sees that he doesn't understand what she's talking about, she finally gives him the news, and notifies him that the boy has managed to reach his second circle. Professor Hubert is sincerely surprised and wonders how that is possible. Meanwhile, the two boys take their places and prepare for the fight in the Academy Stadium. Before the match begins, a new screen appears in front of Russell. The screen notifies him that the next mission is to win during magic training, and that he can receive low-grade magic stones, and have a compartment that can carry things weighing 40. Russell is happy to know he will receive a compartment, since this is a magic only the richest mages can use. The compartment allows storing things, so it will be very useful for keeping magic stones. While still thinking about this, Anton calls him and calls him Insect. The bully asks if his body is frozen. Anton tells him that his only option to survive this fight is to beg. Our boy suddenly laughs. Russell covers his entire body with energy and asks Anton if he is talking to him. Anton notices his transformation and wonders if that is what he is thinking while they keep chatting. The professor coordinating the games tells them to move to their place in the circle. so the fight can begin. He remembers the magic Russell we just used and wonders if someone with the narrowing of the mana veins could have reached the second circle, but quickly dismisses the idea because it's not possible. When the match starts, Anton quickly releases a second circle magic, called Flamethrower, that launches a stream of flames directly at our boy. Russell quickly detects the flame heading toward him and responds immediately by summoning a shield that deflects the fire. Russell holds the shield in place and continues, enduring the stream of fire. One of the nearby observing professors is surprised by his brilliant response. The professor coordinating the match also watches and is amazed by Russell's performance. Anton, who has been throwing flames for quite a while, quickly gets tired of holding his arms in place and is surprised that Russell is able to withstand the fire assault. Suddenly, the stream of fire stops because his body needs to regulate the mana he is losing, and Anton starts cursing because the fire has ceased. Our boy notices the stop and quickly takes advantage of the opportunity since he expected that to happen. Russell also uses a second circle magic known as Fire Arrow, quickly launches the arrow toward Anton, who has stopped shooting flames. Anton is surprised to see him use the fire arrow and immediately tries to respond. He starts wondering if Russell really achieved his second circle, and quickly surrounds himself with a shield to stop the arrow. The arrow hits the shield but does not reach him. Anton feels the impact of the fire arrow and wonders how an insect like Russell can put up such a fight while still holding the shield to protect himself from the impact of the fire arrow that keeps burning. He notices something else. What he sees scares him. Right in front of him, Russell has already successfully launched a second fire arrow. The second arrow heads toward the shield of Anton, and Russell are not given a break by the coordinating professor. The session is surprised and wonders if it is a double cast. Another professor tells him it is not a double cast, but that his casting speed is so fast it seems like it is. While they talk, Russell creates another fire arrow. Anton doesn't notice and wonders if making a fire arrow is all his opponent can do. He decides to devise a way, secretly, to defeat him, and changes the structure of his shield, turning it into one specialized against fire, using another second circle magic. Meanwhile, Russell notices the change and smiles, because that is what he has been waiting for. Anton boasts about his plan to wait for Russell to spend all his mana on his fire-resistant shield to then counterattack. However, what he did not expect is that Russell cancels the fire arrow cast and starts casting another spell. The fire in his hand disappears, and a strong wind begins to appear. Anton is surprised by the sudden transformation and exclaims because it seems his plan has been thwarted. Russell uses a second circle magic called Wind Arrow and launches it directly at his opponent's shield. Anton is hit by the arrow and falls backwards, surprised that the insect was able to identify the type of shield he was using and modify his cast. The new professor, watching the fight, opens his mouth wide and wonders if this is the same Russell he knows. Meanwhile, the professor who manipulated the selection so they would choose Anton cannot believe what he sees and keeps sweating profusely. Anton groans in pain from the impact and loses control of his shield. The anger is reflected in his eyes, and he can't believe such a small brat is defeating him. But before he can make his next move, Russell approaches him and starts casting another spell. This time our guy casts a lightning spell. A lightning bolt shoots from his hand and hits Anton in the chest, pushing him even further back. His eyes turn white as he groans from the unbearable pain of the shock. He tries to generate fire to counter the attack, but he is too weak. Russell doesn't give him a second of respite and launches him again with another attack. He attacks the bully with another lightning bolt. The professor who manipulated the selection for Anton begins to protest, saying he doesn't recognize the type of magic Russell is using, and claims that the fight must be stopped immediately nearby the professor. Hubert tells the complaining professor to look more closely at what is covering Russell's body, so he can convince himself that it really is magic. The professor quickly looks at Russell's body, and is surprised to see a bright aura. Around him, he stammers and comments that he is using mana, like the aura of the knights. Professor Hubert smiles proudly and mentions that he doesn't know how he managed to do this, but it seems he has found a way out of his problem. Meanwhile, Russell keeps hitting Anton until he falls to the ground. He soon stops when Anton creates a comfortable hole in the ground. The students are all surprised by the turn of events, and their jaws almost drop. The corrupt professor wonders how this could have happened. While thinking, he hears a voice asking what he is doing. He quickly looks to his side, and Professor Hubert reminds him he is supposed to announce the winner. The corrupt professor stammers and quickly announces the winner. He loudly declares that Russell Raymond is the winner. Due to the strange turn of events, the professor slowly approaches him, awkwardly congratulates him, and tells him he can leave, but Russell replies that he is not done yet. When the professor asks what he means, our guy reminds him of the class rules. According to the class rules, unless a winner surrenders, They must be allowed to call the next opponent, Anton's friends exclaim, surprised because they realize it's their turn to get beaten. Russell quickly points to one of them and tells him it's his turn. The system suddenly shows another notification informing him that his new mission is to win the next magical duel, and with rewards of 2 low-grade magical stones and additional rewards for consecutive wins. Roussel looks at the boy and tells him to head to the combat circle. After the game, Professor Hubert murmurs to himself that our boy has won 14 duels in a row. Considering the game, he reasons that Roussel has great insight. He seems proud to have been able to recognize Roussel's potential. Long ago, however, the professor begins to wonder how he has grown so fast. He recalls all his moves on the field. Meanwhile, Russell receives a notification that he has completed his mission, and a compartment has been unlocked as a reward. The system notifies him that all his rewards will be automatically placed in the compartment from now on. He also receives a series of magical stones as a reward for each fight won. There seems to be something unknown in the compartment, what the system gave him as a reward. Roussel takes a look at the notification about the unknown object, and wonders what it could be. He summons the compartment to find out. Our boy puts his hand in and checks. When he takes it out, it turns out to be some kind of map where the X marks the spot. Again, a notification appears with a new mission, in which he must go to the map location and complete the mission. A sign there, the system notifies him that some lights will guide his way when he gets close to the location. The mission reward is something unknown. Besides 5 intermediate-grade magical stones, the system issues a warning that it is better to attempt this mission after reaching the 3rd circle. Roussel is surprised to read that he must reach the 3rd circle. He thinks about the 3rd circle and remembers that he tried several times in his past life, but never managed to reach that level. Another problem is that he does not know where this mysterious place is, and it seems he cannot distinguish it on the map. He quickly goes to the professor's library, hoping to find something that indicates the location of the place. He leaves a series of books on the table and hopes to find a clue in one of them. The first one he finds is called The Outer Territories of the Semian Kingdoms, and he eagerly skims through it. He has no luck with that, so he checks the next one. He doesn't find it either, so he checks the next one, and it also has no information. Then he checks another but doesn't find it either after checking dozens of books. He growls frustrated, realizing that none of the places in those books matches the location he is looking for. He curses in frustration as he leaves the library and realizes he has lost too much time. He decides it will be better to focus first on reaching the 3rd circle while walking down the hall. Several students shrink back in fear upon seeing his demonstration in the stadium. Russell thinks to himself that he has managed to escape resentment and bullying. The only problem is that he is still a loner while thinking about this. He hears someone calling him from behind. He looks back, and it turns out to be Professor Hubert, who kindly asks if he can come see him in his office. Russell happily agrees to go see him when they arrive at the office. The professor, Hubert, comments that it is almost summer vacation. He serves tea and asks Russell if he has any plans for the holidays. Roussel tells him he doesn't have plans yet. Upon hearing that, Professor Hubert asks if he would like to work with him on a research project, which surprises him. The professor mentions that depending on how he performs, he might even have his name alongside his as author. Roussel takes the research work and looks at the image on it. Recognizes the place. The professor asks him what he is thinking about. Noticing the surprise on his face, Roussel apologizes quickly and tells Professor Hubert that he actually has plans for the summer. The professor looks at him confused, wondering why he said he had no plans. Roussel hands him the book and says he plans to go to the place drawn in it. He also gives the map he obtained to Professor Hubert. Hubert looks at the place on the map and recognizes the site as the Maldives. Sometime later, when summer vacation arrives, Russell begins his journey to the Maldives. He sits in the back of a carriage while enjoying the view from the window. Later, Russell invokes the compartment again, takes out a monotonous ration from the compartment and throws it into his mouth, telling himself this will fill his stomach for the journey ahead. He says he will reach the 3rd circle before arriving in the Maldives. Meanwhile, the professor thinks about how strange Russell's trip is. The reason it seems strange is because someone else is also heading to the Maldives. He thinks that Daria, his teacher, must be in the Maldives right now, and it could be a good thing that Russell is heading there. Meanwhile, by the Sea of the Maldives, Daria sunbathes on the beach and enjoys her vacation. She thinks to herself that the place may be her hometown, but it always seems beautiful. She enjoys a drink and wonders how much time has passed. Since her last break, she realizes she has been busy protecting the Empire, giving presentations on magical research, and even developing her students. The teacher remembers a moment when she was talking with her students. She mentions the numbers 9, 6, and 3, creates fire in her hands, and explains that these 3 numbers have a special meaning for wizards. The children are Amazed by the depth of her skill and listen attentively, Daria teaches them that the 3 numbers mean the end for a person who is already walking the path of magic. The 9th circle means the culmination of a wizard. The 6th circle who has not yet arrived there, and the suffering they will have to endure to become a great wizard. The 3rd circle means something different. It means the beginning of a person who remains alone as a wizard. Daria thinks about how it feels to be alone as a mage. Suddenly she remembers her encounter with Russell and wonders if the boy is okay. She keeps thinking about how she saw him reading an advanced magic book. Meanwhile, the carriage in which Russell travels finally arrives in the Maldives, and the driver informs him that they have reached their destination. The driver waits a while and notices that our boy does not get off. When he returns to see his passenger, he exclaims, surprised to see the state he finds him in. Sometime later, Russell furiously devours some food. In front of him, there is a mountain of food, and he remembers that he used too much force trying to calm the uncontrolled mana when he tried to draw the 3rd circle. In a flashback of when the driver returned to check how he was, the driver found him unconscious and tried frantically to revive him, thinking he had died. In the present, Russell drinks a beverage and is happy to have finally reached the 3rd circle. He empties the cup in front of him and drops it on the table. He thinks about how incredible it is to have reached the magic of the 3rd circle. The fact that he has been able to surpass his past life's limit just a few months after having returned to the past leaves him amazed. He leaves some coins to pay for the food and prepares to leave. As he leaves, he tells himself he will have to go beyond the 3rd circle. The system brings up the mission related to the map again and notifies him that he must find the place marked on the map. The screen notifies him that the light will guide him once he takes the bold step to approach the area marked with an X. Russell checks the map again and realizes he has to find the place on the map, but does not know the landscape. While still thinking about how to get directions, he hears a tour guide informing some men that he will take them on the best tour around Mount Pompeii. The tour guide shouts loudly, "Tall," and explains that he is offering a special discount only for today. Shortly after, Russell joins the tour and follows the guide. While leading them along a rocky path, the guide tells them that Pompeii was originally a common mountain that somehow transformed into a volcano. The mountain suddenly became a volcano because a special creature began to live in it. The guide instantly mentions that there is only one creature with that description in the whole world, and the creature is none other than the red dragon. Russell decides it might be a good idea to start moving alone from that moment. Our guy crouches behind the other tourists and proceeds to jump off the cliff. Where they are standing, our guy jumps into the river nearby and starts walking on the water. He tells himself there might be a connection between this place and the reason why he was sent to the past, his growth, his missions, and the rewards he has been receiving. While following the map to a waterfall, he reasons that maybe all of that was to lead him to something. Our guy believes that everything that has happened recently could have something to do with the dragon that once lived here. While looking at the map, parts of light come out of it and float in front of him. The light merges and becomes something circular that looks like an eye. Suddenly the beam of light moves away from the map and starts heading somewhere. Suddenly he remembers that this must be the light they told him would guide him. The light moves over the river and passes through the waterfall. Russell smiles slightly and realizes that his mission is behind the waterfall. Quickly, he casts a wind spell and shoots a wind arrow through the waterfall to clear a path to pass through. After that, our guy jumps through the hole to avoid getting wet. Once inside, he lands on a rock and discovers there is a lava cave right behind the waterfall. He remembers that the system warned him to wait until reaching the 3rd circle to come here, but notices he can't see monsters or beasts and wonders why that warning was issued. Our guy keeps moving through the cave. Cautious with every step, he encounters some pillars, indicating that someone or some people lived there some time ago. He places his hands on one of the pillars and wonders how long it has been built. While inspecting it, something catches his attention from the corner of his eye. Finally, he finds that the light he was following stops in front of a strange door. Russell approaches the door to investigate what is behind. When he gets close, his sense of alertness starts tingling, and he feels like something is wrong. He stops and wonders if he suddenly forgot the things he learned from his life as a mercenary. The thing is that in a situation where there are no monsters, beasts, or any sound, there can only be one explanation. It means you have entered the territory of a strong predator. Suddenly, a huge lizard emerges in front of Russell and looks down at him. Russell jumps back to avoid having his head bitten. When he is a few meters from the creature, he looks at it again and realizes it is the comfortable lizard monster he remembers from his days as a mercenary, a monster that can only be defeated. With at least 2 teams of mercenaries, our guy watches how the monster advances towards him and decides that the only thing he can do now is run, because there is no way to kill it. He decides to slow it down using some lightning magic. Russell chooses the 2nd circle magic, called Lightning Arrow, and starts generating it. The comfortable lizard roars at him again as it approaches. Our guy does not give in to fear, and aims the arrow at its face. He shoots the arrow directly at it, hoping to perform an attack and slow it down to escape. The impact is so strong that it electrocutes the comfortable lizard and immobilizes the monster for a while. Russell is happy to have been able to delay it with that move, so he decides to run. He heads straight towards the stone door, where he had seen the light to have it to reach the next part of this mission. When she is a few centimeters from the door, the two statues in front of her block her way with their spears and declare that she must prove she is worthy to enter with her mana. Roussel is surprised by this and realizes that it will not be so easy to get out of this. The comfortable lizard soon arrives where he is, and it seems that he has easily shaken off the effects of the lightning. Roussel looks back and realizes that he cannot go this way or that way. He thinks quickly and decides to do something erratic, since his path is blocked, turning around angrily. He tells himself that he will have to make his own path. He extends his hand and generates fire that he directs at the comfortable lizard. Suddenly, the stone in the door scans the mana that Russell is emitting. The monster notices the stone's response to Russell's mana and watches in amazement. Instead of advancing, the comfortable lizard suddenly stops. Roussel is also surprised and wonders why the lizard stopped dead in its tracks. The comfortable monster moves and almost stands up, and Roussel watches it with total confusion. Suddenly, the guards who were blocking the door retract their spears and stop blocking his way to the door. The mysterious voice that spoke before tells him that he has proven to be worthy. This means that he can now enter. The red stone in the door begins to glow intensely. The light becomes much brighter until it envelops the entire cave in which Russell is standing. Shortly after, our boy wakes up. With a terrible headache in a completely different place, he quickly scans his surroundings and realizes that things have changed. He touches the ground and notices that it is made of ice, and wonders how he is standing on ice when just moments before he was in a cave. It is not clear where he is, since all he can see is an ice cave and some ice statues. As he looks around, he remembers that he was in a cave a few moments ago, and wonders if he was brought here by teleportation magic. While thinking about this, he notices something strange. Right behind him on some nearby stairs, also made of ice, there is a mysterious magical horn that is held by a series of chains. While reflecting, another screen appears. The system notifies him that he has a second mission, which is to defeat all the ice golems in the area and pass the trial by fire. A noise coming from behind him makes him turn quickly to investigate. He realizes that the ice statues he saw were actually golems, and now they have come to life. He looks around and realizes that he is surrounded by several sturdy ice golems and wonders if they really expect him to defeat all those golems alone. There is no time to lose, so he decides to get to work and begins to generate some fire magic in his palms. He creates another fireball and throws it at a nearby golem like crazy. The fireball crosses the ice cave and heads straight toward the monster. The ball hits the golem right in the chest, and it seems that it should do quite a bit of damage. Since fire beats ice, Russell remembers that to kill a golem, you have to crush the core inside it. The golem he shot seems completely unharmed, and if it could speak, it seems like it is asking. If that is all he has, the fireball only managed to leave a crack in its chest. Roussel complains upon seeing this and wonders how cold the ice it is made of must be. He decides to try another approach, since fire does not work, so he begins to create some wind magic in his palms. There seems to be a problem because the wind does not respond. Our boy notices this, and is surprised. He wonders why his wind magic suddenly is not working while he keeps thinking the golem. Our boy notices this, and is surprised. He wonders why his wind magic suddenly isn't working while still thinking the golem. Runs toward him and tries to smash his head against the ground. Russell responds quickly, and decides to use some lightning instead. However, the lightning also doesn't come out, and Russell realizes he is lost. The golem hits the spot where he was standing. Luckily, Russell manages to move back before the blow reaches him. He slides backward and stops when he reaches an ice wall. He thinks about the notification he received earlier, trying to get some information about why his magic is suddenly not working. He remembers that the system mentioned something about passing a trial by fire. Another golem comes to hit him like an insect waiting to be crushed against the wall. Trying to avoid the monster, he trips over an ice rock. They push him against the wall, and he ends up in a dead end. All the golems trap him in that alley, and it seems things are going to get worse. Russell groans from the terrible impact of hitting the wall. His head starts to bleed, and it seems he also hit his head against the wall with a deadly look in his eyes. Our guy creates another fire ray and advances toward the golems. Finally, he faces the challenge. The golems look at him amazed. While his whole body is surrounded by fire and mana, Russell shoots 3 fire rays at the same time. The ice golem seems surprised by the sudden change in tactics, but he can't move in time because the arrows are quite fast. The impact of the 3 rays is quite explosive. The golem's core is exposed by the explosive rays. Russell proceeds to destroy it. He shoots another ray directly at the core and shatters the golem into pieces. Russell does the same with another nearby golem, and the method works. He starts to pant, and realizes that so far he has only been able to take down 2 of them at this rate. He will probably run out of mana before he can eliminate them all. Our guy grimaces and decides to try something else. One of the golems tries to hit him to the ground, but our guy quickly runs backward. To rest and rethink his strategy, he considers that to destroy their thick ice layer in one hit, he needs something similar to how knights break iron shields with a single blow. To do this, he must concentrate all his power on a single point in the end. He thinks he needs to increase the mass in each volume of his attacks. This is not going to be a simple spell, so he decides to move away to gain time and cast such a complicated spell. When he creates some space between him and the golems, he starts the spell. He starts by creating a fire arrow. He applies the amplification formula to the arrow to make it bigger and heavier to replicate the rays. He adds the replication formula. Everything works well, and several fire arrows emerge finally. There is something else he needs to do to make the attack really dense. He has to fuse all the arrows into one so that one arrow carries the power of several at once. He has managed to replicate 5 fire arrows, and the only thing left is to fuse them. Russell begins to apply the magical compression formula, fusing all the arrows between his palms, and starts to make them into one. Suddenly, one of the ice golems appears in front of him. The golem lunges at him with a heavy blow, and it seems Russell will be crushed against the icy ground. He starts to scream and begs for the arrow to fuse quickly, so he won't die at the last moment. He shoots the fused arrow, and a great explosion occurs. The explosion is so big it stops the golems in their tracks. One of them receives a huge hole in the chest from the explosion right where its core was. Russell moves away and lets the ice golem crash to the ground. He walks majestically with his newly created weapon, which he calls the flame spear once again. His eyes transform into those of a dragon. The system sends him a notification that his understanding of the fire elements has transcended the limits. Russell agrees with the notification and says he can feel it. He reasons that the power he feels is close to something from the 5th circle. He holds the spear and notices that just holding it is a great energy drain. To avoid wasting energy, the golems make the first move and rush towards him to let him know they are not intimidated by his flashy new weapon. He launches his attack right from where he is and burns the core of 3 of the golems. Moving on to the next and the next, Russell counts that only 4 of them remain, so he quickly proceeds to finish what he started, breaking the core of one of them with ease. He cuts the second with his weapon, also destroying the core. Now only 2 remain. While counting, one of the golems launches a vertical attack and tries to hit him, but he easily moves out of the way. He jumps at the monster to knock it down and cuts it in half for its insolence. After that, the first golem falls. The last golem decides to attack from a distance and throws huge ice rocks. Fortunately, Russell blocks the rocks, but some hit him, and he realizes he would have been instantly killed if he hadn't blocked with his spear. At this point, he only has 1 breath of mana left, and his spear begins to dematerialize. Russell stands up and holds the spear, telling himself there is one last thing he can do, and if that's the case, he decides to throw the spear at the monster. This is the final blow. So it's critical. It would be terrible if he misses. Finally, Russell throws the spear. When the monster gets close enough and he hopes it will reach it, finally, the spear pierces its ice shield and reaches its core. Russell stays there after his throw and watches how the spear pierces the monster. Our guy keeps watching and looks through the large hole in the monster's chest. When he realizes he has taken down all of them, he collapses to the ground. The system appears again and notifies him that he has completed the mission and will receive the reward of 2 low-grade mana stones and 3 lower-grade mana stones. He will also receive the unknown item. The unknown item is something called the Horn of the Forgotten King. Suddenly, the horn is wrapped in fire. The screen appears again and shows that this is the Horn of the Forgotten King, and it has fire essence. The horn begins to release a great amount of light that fills the entire ice cave. The light fills the cave, but Russell does not notice because he is unconscious from exhaustion. The system shows that he needs to enter the thoughts of the Forgotten King to receive his reward. Shortly after, Russell wakes up in a strange place in this dimension. He is bound by chains and tries to recognize the place. The screen appears in front of him and tells him he has obtained the unknown item, called the Horn of the Forgotten King with fire essence. It also shows him that he must enter the thoughts of the Forgotten King to receive his reward. When he looks around his chains, he wonders what kind of reward this is, because he feels like he is being tortured. Suddenly, the voice of the Forgotten King resonates. The voice of the Forgotten King continues and tells him that he will grant him something called the King's Fragment. The horn appears where he is, covered in fire. The tip of the horn begins to approach him, and Russell is surprised because it looks like he is about to be impaled. Just as he thought, the horn pierces him. He screams in pain, and it's clear that the chains were placed there to prevent him from escaping this. The pointed end of the horn pierces his flesh and enters him. The horn releases a great amount of energy inside him, and it looks like he is about to explode. He keeps screaming at the top of his lungs due to the pain. The voice continues and tells him to use the power to do something, but Russell can no longer hear it because of what he is experiencing. Behind him appears a great dragon that seems to be the Forgotten King. Moments later, Russell appears on the shore after the water carries him there. Suddenly he wakes up and groans, because it seems like his whole body hurts. He wonders what is happening and tries to figure out where he is. It seems to him that he is still in Mala, because the style of the building seems to point to that. He looks confused for a moment, and it seems that his memory begins to fail him. The system notifies him that he has consumed the king's horn, forgotten, and has reached a limit. He is also informed that the mana that he was above his limit has been stored. The system also tells him that his understanding, intermediate of the fire attributes, has reached its limit and has passed to an advanced understanding of the fire attributes. Russell closes the palm of his hand and tries to activate his mana to confirm what he has been told. His body suddenly releases a large amount of mana, incomparable to what he has experienced before, which surprises him. To see how close he is to the fourth circle, he looks around and wonders if that mana really comes from him. Our boy remembers the treatment he received when he was chained, but he smiles because the rewards are really worth it. Suddenly he hears someone's voice behind him, telling him it's nice to see him there. Behind him is the great Miss Daria Snow White, dressed in normal clothes, whom he is surprised to see in bad. She takes him to one of the bars by the beach, and mentions that she had felt a sudden explosion of mana. She says she came to investigate, and that's how she found him. Russell thanks her while receiving the drink she offers him. He smiles and says he didn't expect to see her in this place. Meanwhile, the teacher scans him with her eyes and realizes that he is about to reach the fourth circle in such a short time. She also notices that his mana has become purer in that time. While they continue talking, Russell asks the tower teacher what brings her to Maldiva. She tells him that Maldiva is her hometown, but that many people do not know it. Russell is surprised to hear that and asks again to make sure he heard correctly. Miss Daria responds affirmatively and says that is the reason why she comes here every summer. Because she is curious, he also decides to ask what brings him to Maldiva. Russell hesitates before answering and decides that maybe it is too soon to tell the truth. Finally, he finds a good enough excuse and says he came to see more of the world. The tower teacher smiles and confirms his statement, but wonders if she should check the boy's skills. She decides to go ahead and asks if he minds helping her a little, to which Russell seems confused. Miss Daria snaps her fingers and suddenly something magical happens. A bit of fire surrounds Russell's body and dresses him with a black cloak. He recognizes the symbol on his cloak as the symbol of the Flame Tower, and wonders why she gave it to him. The teacher tells him not to worry, and informs him that the task she wants to give him is something he can handle. Suddenly a screen appears, notifying him that his new mission is to pass Miss Daria Snow White's test. He is informed that he will have to help her face the pirates of the human trafficking ships in the port of Maldiva. To pass the test, the reward for completing the mission is an intermediate grade Mana Stone. The teacher mentions that she is sure he already knows that. Emion strictly prohibits slavery, she explains. That is why they do not allow human trafficking ships to dock in their port. Unfortunately, there are still some people who ignore their laws. She informs him that there are some guys trying to land with their human trafficking ship near Maldiva, and she would like him to help her deal with them. That same night, they both get on a boat and proceed with the mission. Miss Daria informs him that he can do the mission by himself. The only problem is that the plan involves rescuing the victims, as well as taking the ship. Russell understands and tells her that means they need to fake an attack to distract the enemies and rescue the victims. The teacher praises his quick understanding while they continue the journey. Russell thinks deeply, considers the fact that 100 mages would run barefoot to distract the enemies and rescue the victims. The teacher praises his quick understanding while they continue the journey. Russell thinks deeply, considers the fact that 100 mages would run barefoot if the Flame Tower teacher asked them for help. So if she is specifically asking him, it is not because she really needs it, but because she wants to test him. Soon they arrive at the ship they were looking for before he gets off the boat. She tells him that what happens from now on might be too much for him. She explains that he has to deal with it, because the path of a guardian is not always smooth or noble. Apparently this is just another fate for the mages. After finishing speaking, she steps on the edge of the boat to go towards the ship. Levitating to one side of it, she tells him that she will attract their attention and make it look like an attack, which will give her enough time to save the people who have been kidnapped. Russell just watches while the master of the Tower of Flames flies to the top of the ship, Looking quite tense, Mystaria flies up until reaching a comfortable height above the ship. When she reaches a suitable height, she stops and says that height should be enough. Suddenly she begins to activate her mana. The whole place fills with a bright glowing light, and she shouts to Russell to go help the people. When the pirates see the bright light, they get scared thinking they are being attacked. They head to the deck and start preparing a giant crossbow to shoot at the master of the Tower of Flames. Several of the men arm themselves with smaller crossbows and prepare to defend the ship. Their leader gives the signal and tells them to shoot at the light above the ship. Dozens of arrows fly into the sky aimed at the light above the ship. Mystaria just smiles from inside the light at their pathetic attempts to attack her. One of the soldiers starts cursing. When he realizes his arrows did not reach the master, Mystaria creates a ball of lava in her hands and throws it at the ship, causing it to split into several parts on the deck. The lava portions fall onto the ship and start small fires all over the vessel. The pirates see the fires and are surprised. One of them tries to put them out by stomping on the flames, but it doesn't work. Eventually a hand of fire emerges from the fire and grabs the man's leg. They are not fire after all, but golems made of fire. The man is extremely surprised as he struggles with the small creature grabbing his leg. All the fire portions transform into small fire dwarves, who also seem to be armed with weapons made of fire. The men group around the golems, not knowing how to face them. While the men shrink back in fear, one of them, quite confident, approaches the golems with his axe. Meanwhile, Russell boards the ship. He manages to jump aboard while the men are distracted. The confident man tells the others to move because they are not afraid of anything. Russell watches as the man approaches one of the golems and tries to confront it. He sees the man lowering his axe onto the golem, which just watches him innocently. The arrogant guy swings his axe and splits the golem in two. Moments later, the golem begins to reassemble its body and doesn't look too happy. Russell keeps watching and is surprised to be able to see these creatures in person. The attacked golem responds, changes shape, and begins to wrap around the man's legs. Shortly after, the golem completely changes its form and coils around the man, setting him on fire. Russell is surprised at how quickly the golem is able to transform its body. Meanwhile, the other men watch their companion being burned to death. With horror and amazement, Russell snaps out of his daze and decides this is not the best time to see such things. He leaves the place and goes down some stairs to reach the inside of the ship. At the bottom, there is a large prison facility that probably houses the captives. The guardman notices the commotion and wonders what is happening on the deck. One of the prisoners lets out that it seems the Navy has come to rescue them, and he is glad they are safe. The guard bangs on the door with his weapon to scare them and let them keep talking. He tells them it doesn't matter what happens, because none of them will ever escape his reach, and the men shrink back in fear and fall silent. He asks if they heard what he said. Meanwhile, Russell puts a hand on the back of his neck. Our guy decides to knock him out, so he uses some lightning magic. A lightning bolt appears out of nowhere and strikes the fat man. One of the prisoners notices the unconscious guard and approaches to ask if he has come to rescue them. He smiles at the man and says yes, he has come to save them, but informs them that it is safer to stay inside until the pirates have left. The man falls to his knees and begins to thank God for having heard his prayers. Russell looks around and wonders how many people are confined in this small space while they wait. Our guy sees something quite disturbing. He sees a small child crouched in a cell and is shocked that the ruthless pirates are even selling children as slaves. He gets very angry and calls the pirates trash. Moments later, some of the other men arrive at the prison and see Russell. The men quickly notice the unconscious body of their companion lying on the ground. They realize the ship has been invaded by the enemy, and one of them tells the others to capture the guy who invaded the ship. The three men draw their swords and approach Russell. Our guy, who was already angry about the fact that a child was kidnapped, tells them he will be the one to capture them and starts creating a chain of lightning. The chain bounces from one person to another and electrocutes the three men on the spot. The three get electrocuted and fall unconscious. One of them threatens that something bad will happen if their captain arrives. But Russell doesn't let him finish his statement and electrocutes him. With more lightning, our guy continues. Checking the other room in the prison facility, he enters a dark cell and asks what's going on with that cell. One of the people inside the cell asks if he is a mage from the Tower of Flames. Russell quickly creates a ball of light in his hands to see better inside the dark cell. What he sees surprises him because he notices the cell contains several elves. The male elf asks him a second time if he is a mage from the Tower of Flames. Russell, he realizes he must be asking that because of the symbol on his cloak. He informs the elf that he is not yet a member of the Tower of Flames but receives a rude response. When the elf says whatever he says is fine, The elf stands in front of the door, without showing much interest, and tells him to open the door already. Russell thinks to himself that obviously he's going to open the door, but wonders why this guy is so annoying. Although it's known that elves have huge egos, he stops to look at him closely, and wonders if he should leave them there. Suddenly another voice comes from inside the cell and tells the first elf to stop. The female elf among them reminds the first elf to mind his manners. The other male elves are surprised to hear her voice and call her Yo. She tries to stand up, so they help her up. Yo informs the others that Russell is not an ordinary human. She walks to the door and tells them he possesses an emanation as pure as the light of a sunset. Apparently Russell is emanating the scent of spirits, so she smiles at him and tells the others that the other elves are surprised by the claim that the mage is not human. The talkative elf asks Yo what she meant by that. Russell is also surprised by her statement, and wonders what she means by the scent of a spirit. The elves remain puzzled and wonder how it's possible for a human to emit the scent of a spirit. Even Russell starts smelling himself and tries to catch the spirit's scent that Yo mentioned while trying to smell himself. The talkative elf shouts at him. The elf asks Russell to save him from there, and even bows before him. All the elves in the prison follow the example, and the talkative elf begins to beg him. Russell feels a little uncomfortable as he watches them, noting that all the elves who are usually known for their big egos were easily changed by a single phrase from the elf. She looks at him and wonders if he will be a tall elf later. She starts applying some heat to the lock and tries to break it while doing so. God refers to him as a guardian, and asks if he has defeated the pirates and bosses. Russell wonders what he means by bosses. Meanwhile, in the other room of the prison, a man in knight armor enters and finds the guards on the floor. Meanwhile, the knight notices the trail of bodies and sees that the door to the other compartment is open. A sly smile crosses his face as he thinks about all the things he is going to do to the intruder. Meanwhile, on the deck, the pirates keep trying to fight the fire. Golems, their captain, watches them fight while trying to stabilize the ship. Finally, the captain stabilizes the boat and proceeds to draw his sword. Suddenly, he rushes down to the lower deck and decides to join the fun. He quickly cuts off the heads of the fire golems, and it doesn't seem like they can recover from this. When the golems fall, he asks the men if they were fighting so hard for such a light attack. The men begin to rejoice when the captain joins them, and they loudly tell Daria that she is made for them. Daria watches them with amusement. Surprised that they manage to deal with her fire creatures, she decides to come down from the height and join them on the ship to investigate what is really going on. Seconds later, the mistress lands on the ship's deck, and all eyes turn to her while the pirates are surprised to see her approach them. The captain smiles, seeing her, and comments that she has guts to come near them. Daria looks at him cheerfully and tells him that it seems he is the captain. The captain proudly affirms his position as captain and tells her his name is Don Daria. She observes his body and his sword and notices that he is using something called aura. The only explanation for that is that he must have been a knight before, so she asks him what he is doing on a pirate ship. Don laughs for a while and asks if the honor of a knight gives you food and pays the taxes. He laughs heartily and confesses that the Kick brothers are earning much more with the slave trade. When Don gets tired of the talk, he draws his sword and covers the distance between them in the blink of an eye and tries to cut her. Unfortunately, he fails to hit his attack before the mistress of the Tower of Flames flies backward and dodges his attack. Meanwhile, below deck, a large cut appears in the wall and of the inner compartment of the prison. While I try to explain to him that the bosses are dangerous, he quickly turns around to see that he had hit the wooden walls. The cut turns into a loud explosion that causes the wall to collapse. He quickly shields himself to avoid being hit. The second Kick brother mockingly points out that Russell was able to block his attack. The knight proceeds to draw his sword and approaches him. As he approaches, he notices that Russell must be a wizard. Meanwhile, Russell notices that he is using an aura and that is exclusive to knights. The system gives him a new mission and informs him that he is about to face a difficult battle. The mission is to win his first battle against a swordsman. God feels tense because of the knight's presence and warns Russell to be careful. He informs him that the second Kick brother is the sub-captain of this ship, which means he is quite dangerous. The sub-captain draws his strange sword with a big smile on his face and tells Russell that he may be a wizard, but he is still a child. As the knight advances, he asks Russell why he only knocked the men out and comments that he should have killed them when he had the chance. The sub-captain tells Russell he will show him how it's done. Russell also activates his own aura using his mana. Our guy thinks to himself that fire magic does a lot of area damage around because it is made of wood, so he decides to use lightning magic, especially because the man is wearing iron armor. He uses a lightning bolt and shoots several bolts at the sub-captain. The sub-captain quickly notices his attack and moves his sword to block it before the bolts reach him. The sub-captain breaks the wooden floor in front of him and throws some fragments into the air to stop the incoming lightning suddenly, instead of blocking the bursts of lightning flying around him. The sub-captain charges at them and tells Russell that there is something missing. Russell realizes that the lightning flying around him is not affecting his armor and keeps shooting lightning. While our guy shoots a new set of lightning, the sub-captain keeps charging at him and tells him his attacks won't work on him. As the lightning approaches the sub-captain, he simply smiles and blocks them with his iron sword. The lightning hits the sword and dissipates, instead of electrocuting the knight. Russell, still with the shield, watches horrified and wonders how the man's sword is not conducting electricity. The sub-captain approaches him and strikes his shield with his sword. The sub-captain delivers a strong hit on the shield, but it doesn't seem to break. Suddenly the knight stops hitting and simply withdraws his sword slowly from the place where he struck when he withdraws his sword. Russell notices something amazing. There is a large crack where the man hit with his sword, and it seems his sword is not an ordinary sword. Suddenly the part that was hit cracks. Meanwhile on the deck, Don Click quickly approaches the Flame Tower Master and tries to cut her in two. He successfully cuts her in two, but he is surprised to notice it was only a decoy that then bursts into flames. When his attack ends, he sees Daria in front of him surrounded by flames and snorts. He comments that she is a very good mage at running away, but Daria does not respond. When she finally speaks, she asks if his brother is also a knight. Don Click proudly replies that his brother is also a knight, but adds that his brother is not as amazing as he is. While they talk, the fire around Daria turns into another fire dwarf, and Don laughs at it. He asks if she is using the same trick on him again. The master tells him it is not like that, and adds that this time it will be something different. Don is alarmed and wonders what she means. The fire dwarves emerge from the ground, walk toward him with their weapons, and Don wonders what is happening. Daria finally satisfies his curiosity and informs him that the more he cuts them, the more they will multiply. Shortly after, Don attacks the fire dwarves as they advance toward him, and they become almost a dozen. She watches him fight the dwarves and has an expression of deadly satisfaction on her face. Don starts to tense up, realizing he is outnumbered. Fortunately, he moves quickly and keeps fighting them. He wonders how his opponent is able to handle such peculiar fire magic, and when he looks at her, again he realizes who she is. He sees the striking resemblance to the famous witch of the Flame Tower, and realizes she is the same. After Russell's shield is broken, the knight notices that Russell has disappeared suddenly from his sight, and wonders where he went. Quickly looks to his side, and sees Russell standing there, wonders how Russell was able to dodge his attack when he was so close. Our boy just stays there holding his bleeding chest, trying to stabilize himself. The knight remembers that his sword made contact with Roussel's chest, and swears it should already be split in two. Looking more closely at Russell's body, he realizes that he also has an aura around him, and wonders if he is also covering himself with magic to strengthen his physical abilities. The sub-captain thinks to himself that it doesn't matter, since his opponent is basically like a rat trapped in a trap. I, who has been watching the fight, sympathizes with Russell. Russell keeps gasping and tries to stabilize himself. To avoid losing more blood than he already has, he tells himself that he knows something about knights. He remembers that he met a knight once in his past life. This knight he met was quite ruthless, and had massacred a group of mercenaries, innocent, because one of them simply bumped into his shoulder. One of his last victims was Russell, who was seriously injured. But suddenly another mercenary came to his rescue. A strange man stepped in front of him at the last moment, and decided to protect him from the ruthless knight. Apparently, the man who barely managed to stop the knight's madness was a wizard. The wizard created a shield between him and the knight, who attacked his shield full of rage. Eventually the wizard managed to subdue the knight. The knight would have won if it weren't because the wizard had a secret skill up his sleeve. Russell proceeds to create another shield to protect himself as the wizard did. The sub-captain launches himself at him again and proceeds to land another attack on his shield to break it as he did last time. While doing this, Russell remembers the method that the wizard used to save him in his past life and replicates it. The sub-captain launches another strong attack on the shield in an attempt to break it. He manages to crack the shield as expected, but something seems different this time. Russell takes him by surprise and casts a wind spell using second circle magic, wind arrow, and shoots one right at the knight's chest. The attack is so strong that it throws the man to the other end of the room. The knight hits his head against the wall and lets out a groan, with some blood coming out of his mouth. Meanwhile, Russell staggers a bit, and it seems he still hasn't recovered from the wound on his chest. His body seems to have healed, but he still feels pain and wonders if he has lost too much blood. He quickly breaks the lock he heated to free the elves. When the elves come out, they thank him for rescuing them. Our guy asks them to follow him out of the compartment, so they can get off the ship. Suddenly, the ship's sub-captain calls him little brat. The sub-captain looks quite angry, and tells Russell that he should have gone for his head. When he had the chance, Russell wonders how he can survive. After he replicated the attack, the wizard who saved him made none of that matters anymore. So he quickly tells Yo to take the other prisoners and go upstairs, where they will be safe. The sub-captain laughs at his plan and rhetorically asks Russell how he has time to rescue the slaves. He moves from where he is to launch a lightning-fast attack in the blink of an eye. He is already in front of Russell, but our guy quickly activates the shield as usual. The sword strike cracks the first shield, but does not break the second. The knight tells him that he will not give Russell any chance to counterattack this time. As he did last time, he begins to attack the shields quickly, breaking each shield generated in a matter of seconds. Russell has no choice but to keep generating shields, and the sub-captain keeps destroying every shield Russell creates. He decides to keep buying time until the elves manage to get the humans out and escape. While they continue fighting, the elves manage to get the prison key. Russell holds off the assault for a while and waits until they can free the men and the boy. When Yo shouts that they have gotten everyone out and are safe, he takes that as the signal to put his plan into motion. The sub-captain keeps cutting through the shields like a maniac. When he hears informing him that they are free, he tells our boy that nothing will change because they will still catch us. Suddenly, Russell changes his voice to the dragon's voice and tells him that this changes. The whole problem is that he hasn't been able to do what he wanted to do. Because the room was full of captives, suddenly the whole room fills with fire and both are surrounded. The sub-captain is surprised at how quickly the atmosphere has changed. The sub-captain looks into Russell's eyes and notices they are now reptilian, which scares him. He quickly steps back and repositions his swords. The sub-captain gives an awkward laugh and wonders if Russell has changed his mind and is finally ready to kill. He decides to act first before Russell can. He moves quickly, as always, and tells Russell that he is going to pierce him in the shield at once. As he approaches, a bright light suddenly appears, causing the sub-captain to stop. Russell has lowered the shield and now holds one of his own magical inventions, which he used to destroy the ice golems, his special flame spear. The knight continues advancing forward to pierce Russell. With the sword, he wonders if what he is holding is a common fire spear. When he senses Laura, he realizes it is not just a fire spear and notices that this weapon is at least several levels above a common spear made with fire. When the sub-captain approaches, Russell strikes him with the flame spear and everything blurs. Meanwhile, on the deck, Don Click continues fighting the infernal fire dwarves. Soon he starts cursing as he feels overwhelmed. He realizes that the more of them he kills, the more they keep multiplying, but he also knows he can't stop killing them. Don wonders where his foolish brother is, and why he hasn't come to join him. The fire dwarves keep attacking and multiplying. Don has no choice but to keep fighting. He tells them he must hold on a little longer until he can strike. Suddenly, a bright light begins to emerge from the ground through the floorboards. Don looks on the floor and is surprised to see that the light comes from the cabin below. He stops fighting as the light grows brighter and seems to tear the wood beneath his feet. Seconds later, a great explosion of energy emanates from that hole and almost splits the ship in half. The impact of the energy wave knocks Don down. He falls to the ground and slowly loses consciousness. The master of the fire tower watches everything and wonders what is happening. As she keeps watching, she hears a noise behind her. Misery sees the kidnapped people coming out of the lower deck. Russell lies on the ground amid the debris. He seems unconscious and does not open his eyes. A screen appears, showing a notification indicating that Russell has completed his mission and will now receive rewards in the form of intermediate mana stones. When the other men notice their captain is down, they board some guard ships to counterattack and take control of the situation. Miss Daria watches the plans and laughs as she takes her staff. She summons all the fire dwarves with her staff, and they float from the ground and become round to destroy the pirates on the ships. She throws the golems at their guard ships. The infernal fire dwarves land on the smaller nearby ships and eliminate everyone. Meanwhile, below deck, someone approaches Russell and starts healing him. After a while, Russell regains consciousness and asks what happened while trying to get up. Elo tells him not to move, continues the healing process, and adds that his mana is not yet fully recovered, so his healing is not as fast as before. When the master notices that Russell has revived, she tells him he did a good job, defeating 2 knights alone. But Russell doesn't know what she is talking about. Nearby, Don and his brother are tied to a pillar for their bad behavior. Suddenly, I intervenes and tells Russell that he owes him a lot and informs him that he cannot reward him immediately, but he will find a way, and introduces himself as ILO from the White Ash Tree tribe and swears by the honors of his founding parents that one day he will find a way to reward him. Russell introduces himself by name and politely mentions that he only did what he had to do as a guardian. Nearby, the two male elves quickly return to the fire tower mistress and inform her that they have checked the prisoner's conditions, which Daria praises. Miss Daria is impressed by their dedication and congratulates them for training their subordinates to be so kind. Russell watches them amazed and notices that the elves seem to be much kinder. He asks Yo what he meant by what he said when they were in the cabin. Yo just looks at him and struggles to remember what he was referring to. He asks if he means what he said about detecting the scent of a spirit in him, and their conversation catches Miss Daria's attention. Russell confirms that is exactly what he meant. Yo answers his question by asking if maybe his blood is mixed with the blood of a dragon. The accuracy of the question surprises Russell. She continues telling him that he also has the blood of the green dragon running through his veins and explains that for her, the dragon blood he possesses is like a drop of water in a lake, so it is not something important. She only adds that although the amount he has is small, she has learned that dragon blood can also attract spirits. Yo takes our boy's hands and tells him that he can smell a strong spirit scent in him. That is why she asked. Miss Daria Stone listens to the conversation and wonders if the mixed dragon blood is the reason why Russell grows stronger at such an incredible rate. She thinks to herself that Russell could end up being a being that will shake the kingdom of Emeon and even the entire world. Shortly after, some of the good knights come to help the captives get off the ship. When it is time to leave, Miss Daria Stone tells Yo that she assumes he will stay hidden until he can recover his mana. Yo boldly affirms that that is what he plans to do. The mistress informs him that her mansion is not far from there and tells them they are welcome to stay there with her. She also adds that she believes Yo can be helpful with Russell's training. Russell simply looks completely lost while wondering what training the fire tower mistress is referring to, and takes this as an opportunity to settle his debt with Russell. He blushes a little and declares that he will be delighted to join them. Miss Daria asks Russell why he is overreacting and jokingly asks if he does not want her to train him. Our boy quickly tells her that that is not the case and mentions that he would love to. The mistress shows them the way and informs them that the carriages will arrive soon, to which they thank her as they walk toward where they will take the carriages. Russell asks the fire tower mistress if it will be okay for him to undergo her training, since the semester at the academy is about to start soon. Miss Daria simply assures him that Professor Hubert will take care of that. Shortly after, everyone arrives at the carriages. Shortly after, the carriage drivers stop and it seems they have arrived at their destination. Miss Daria tells the others that they have arrived and before them is a magnificent-looking mansion. The fire tower mistress realizes they might feel overwhelmed, so she tells them not to feel pressured and to stay comfortable as they enter. As they walk through the garden, everyone keeps looking around the beautiful mansion. Yo praises Miss Daria's house and says it is a very beautiful place. She thanks Miss Daria for her goodwill toward her and her men as they move inside. Russell looks back and notices something quite familiar. He stops and looks around for a while. Something besides the beauty of the mansion draws him to the landscape, but he can't identify what it is. Suddenly, he remembers that he came here with his parents years ago. Russell approaches Miss Daria and mentions that he would like to ask her a question. She stops and turns to listen to his question, so he asks if the villa wasn't originally hers. Miss Daria feels uncomfortable and tells him that people will think she stole it if they hear. Russell apologizes embarrassed. She confirms his suspicions and informs that he is right since she acquired the villa from some merchants' association years ago. Russell realizes that this villa is one of the places his family owned before his father was murdered, and his family fell apart. Russell remembers that after his family's downfall, he heard that the villa was sold at a low price. He wonders how strange it is to return here this way. A week later, I wake up and enter the hall. The fire tower teacher scans my aura and mentions that she feels relieved to see that I have recovered much of my mana. Yol says it's all thanks to her kindness and help. Miss Daria asks about the matter they had discussed previously, regarding helping with Russell's training. I respond cheerfully that I am ready as one can be. Suddenly I stop talking and ask where Russell is. Miss Daria laughs and informs that she sent Russell to do something. Meanwhile, Russell falls off a cliff and screams at the top of his lungs. Fortunately for him, there is a stream of water below, so he falls into the water. He quickly swims to the surface and gasps for air. He looks back to where he was, standing and worries as he realizes he has failed the exercise again. He remembers the task Miss Daria gave him a few hours earlier. She asked him what was the most important thing he needed during his previous fight. Russell remembers how he had to continuously use a shield to survive that fight. So he mentions that what he needed most was distance. The teacher agrees and tells him that in combat, distance is the most important thing for mages. She smiles and asks him to watch carefully while she does something. Miss Daria steps off the cliff, but a flame wraps around the leg she placed in the void. Shortly after, her entire body is enveloped in fire, and the teacher disappears from sight. Suddenly, she appears at the other end of another cliff, still covered in fire, and crosses to the other side. While Rosal watches, she realizes that she just used spatial distortion magic. This particular method is called blink. After crossing the void between the cliffs, Miss Daria tells him that from that moment on, he should try to cross the cliff using blink. She informs him that he will need it in the future. Suddenly, a message appears on the screen telling him that his new mission is to learn blink. It is revealed that the rewards are intermediate-grade mana stones. Russell finally manages to get out of the water and crawl to the shore. As he climbs back up to reach the top of the cliff, he thinks about the method called blink, and reasons that the ability to use this method does not depend on whether you are on a lower or higher surface. When he reaches the top, he reasons that it is a magic that can only be learned. Understanding its logic, our boy stands up again, and tries once more. Russell takes another leap of faith. He falls to the ground again, and screams as he falls into the water. Hours later, Russell manages to climb back onto the rock and wonders if this blink thing really is just practice or if it is a tactic to make him work on his endurance. After reaching the top, he decides to concentrate more this time. Suddenly, as Russell takes another step, a field of fire appears under his foot as he prepares to take the new step. His second leg also wraps in fire as he continues toward the cliff. He hears a surprising noise behind him, telling him to act now. He falls again, and then looks back, realizing the person who interrupted him is Daria. Daria watches him fall and gives him an awkward smile, while our guy screams as he hits the ground that night. Miss Daria takes Russell and me to a private place in a rocky area. In front of a fireplace, she tells Russell that, starting today, he will learn about contracts with spirits. The fire tower teacher informs him that I will help him with that. I get up from my seat and say I am happy to help. Our guy also thanks me as they begin. I ask Russell to slowly close his eyes. I ask him to imagine something related to fire. Suddenly, Russell's whole body is wrapped in fire as he thinks about fire. She informs him she will enter his imagination to guide him, and she does just that. In the world of imagination, I appear in Russell's mind and take his hand to guide him on the right path. I begin to explain that there is something most people don't know. She says the door to the spirits is open to everyone. It doesn't matter if you are human, elf, or any other entity. This doesn't matter because all entities are born from nature after all. In his mind, visions of death and great war begin to appear. Suddenly more flames come out of Russell's body. The fire is so great that even the fire tower teacher is surprised.